Hello, everyone. Welcome back from your donuts. Did you? I couldn't finish mine. It was like a weird cheat. I don't know. Anyways, it was very rich. Yes, hello. And I just want to say thank you to all of you and also to the organizers. I really love this conference. It's an amazing conference. I can't believe that, the first time I came here was 2 years ago on a diversity scholarship. So it's been really amazing just coming back and like all the relationships and friendships in the community here. Thank you all. Thank you, organizers. You're all amazing. So first, hello, I'm Abby, in case you don't recognize me. Okay. So I work for the Mozilla Foundation as lead developer of open source engagement, which means I'm working with the open source community in the different programs part of Mozilla. So that includes open science, Internet of Things, Women in Tech, advocacy learning. Also, I'm Canadian. That's very important. Yay, Canada. So a little bit of history. I came to the Mozilla Foundation through the science lab. Before that, I was working in research labs, and we're dealing with lots of data analysis, and it was so easy to see how the web could really make science just better. So that's why I came to Mozilla to help them do that. So at Mozilla, our mission is to ensure the internet is a global public resource, open and accessible to all. And at the science lab, and most of the work I'm talking about today will be from when I was at the science lab specifically, we're applying Mozilla's grand mission to a very interesting community of practice. So this is my story. A little disclaimer, these are not instructions. I know it's titled How to Bring Open Source to Your Closed Community. But I hope the story from the past 7 or 8 years of my life will help you, and you'll learn some lessons through this. Also, I'm really interested to hear your feedback on our plans because we're starting to bring this to different communities past just open science. So I'd love to hear what you guys think. I mean, you all think. OK. So my story starts with open source. I actually wrote open source code for years and years before I actually understood what it was and what it meant and what this whole movement was about. So we're going to look at the origin of the term open source, just to help give some cultural context at the time, because the free software movement predates this term by quite a few years, like a decade or so. And I know I talk about open source a lot, so I'm going to do it again for a little bit, because it's very important. So I think it starts with this essay that Eric Raymond wrote called The Cathedral and the Bazaar in 1997. And in this, he compared the state of free software at the time, these two types of free software he saw. And the first was the cathedral, where it's technically public. Anyone can come in and take part in a service. But the very few people were in charge of what was happening there. Even the way it's built, like an architect and people were involved with this. And you compare that to a bazaar, which is just a public space, and people set up tables, and you can sell whatever you like, and you can barter things. And it's really the people who make this happen. So he saw this happening in Linux with the bazaar. It was like a giant group of people with different agendas sort of came together and built something that was better because of all their diversity. I'm not sure, but I think something's on fire in the bazaar. I'm not really sure, but I think that's a great metaphor for open source. Maybe something's on fire, who knows? But things get fixed because there's so many people there. So this essay actually inspired the Netscape Corporation to release Netscape Browser Suite as free software the following year. And that became the basis of the Mozilla project, and it inspired the term open source. There's actually a meeting of the free software movement strategy people. They were like, oh, Mozilla did something. We'll call it open source. So this is really part of what Mozilla is and what we're trying to do today in open science and these other groups. So I don't know if you remember the early 2000s, but there were no browser wars. It was just Internet Explorer. And the fact that this community could come together and build something that toppled a giant was really amazing. And it really pointed to this idea that we're all better together. Yeah, diverse group people working on a problem. But how do we get this diverse group together? And the way Mozilla approaches that is through this idea of working open, that things are both public and participatory. So we need to restructure our efforts so that outsiders can meaningfully participate and become insiders as appropriate. I think that's a little key that made me understand how, what open source is and how this movement sort of works and engages people. So shortly after they made up the term open source, the Open Source Initiative started. And I think this really is why open source is still here today. They outlined 10 steps in how you are a real open source project. So thanks to all the people there. So back to my story. I learned about open source, but then also science. I was working in bioinformatics in like a cancer research institute. And I won't go too deep into this, but sometimes trying to participate in science can feel like this. This is a few great illustrations from John McKiernan on why open research. But especially after I left academia, I couldn't get to research anymore. But even when I was within academia, it was only the specialists that could really participate in something and help make discoveries. And when you are in this community, you're always scared of getting scooped. You're worried that someone else will publish before you and you won't get the credit for it. And I think it's just a lack of education on how open licenses can protect you and help you. So one of the first things we tried to do to help bring open source into science when I joined the science lab was this Collaborate, which is a collection of open source projects for science. And it's still there. It looks different now. And it's still great. You have a bunch of open source projects. But something I realized was that in general, we weren't that great at open source researchers. People would come to the projects, but they wouldn't know how to get involved, or things weren't laid out well, or people weren't responsive. So I realized there was a culture change that needed to happen so that research could be more open and could participate in more open source. So that brings us to the third point in my story, fueling the movement. And this is actually the last point in my story, and most of my talk will be this one. If you're taking notes, I don't know. I like making lists of 3. You're going to see lists of 3 many more times. So I actually couldn't find a good definition of a movement that I liked, so I'm defining it here as mobilizing a community around a shared purpose. I don't know if there's probably a better definition, but I like this one, because you need a community for culture change. You need to mobilize people so that they're actually doing something. So I like this diagram, so this is a dancing guy. This is from a TED Talk by Derek Sivers. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But he was talking about movements and how one guy dancing can inspire someone else to come and join you. And it starts mobilizing people. And eventually, you see some cool stuff happening over there. Maybe someone else is going to join. Maybe someone else is going to join. This is really funny to watch. You can see the whole thing online. But slowly, more people get involved. And it's not just one guy dancing anymore. It's a group of them. And that mobilizes other people. Oh, yay, someone came. And this is just really funny to watch. I like the shaky cam, too. And then more and more people. Oh, man, OK. I'm falling down. We'll just watch this for a second. It's a lot of fun. Yay, there's a group. So now it's a group dancing. It's no longer just one person doing his own thing. But now this is something people are taking notice of. And then even bystanders, if you're on the edge and you don't know what to do, suddenly it makes more sense for you to join than to just sit around. So I really like this. I like this as a description of a movement visually. OK, moving on. So this is a figure from Marshall Gantz's essay, Public Narrative, Collective Action and Power, which I would recommend if you're interested in cultural change. But he talks about how to get people to take action. So now if we're actually trying to mobilize these people, he talks about how you need 2 things, both strategy and narrative. So you need to have the head knowledge of what you need to do, but also the narrative of why this is important. So talking to researchers, I think they all understood why it was important. They know that sharing data is better, but they didn't have a good strategy on how to do that without killing their career or not knowing what to do. So I made a plan to fuel the movement. Another list of 3 things. First was resources to help with that strategy, to give people that. Then talking to leaders and mobilizing them so that they can mobilize other people through mentorship and keep the movement going. Like the dancing guy. OK. Oh, so first on resources. We're actually going to do a little exercise that I did with the science team on trying to brainstorm what kind of steps people need to do this. So how do outsiders become insiders today? This is what working open is. So everyone, think of a place you felt welcome the first time you visited. So I'll give you a few seconds. Think. OK, what place are you thinking of? You can yell it out. Oh, Strange Loop. Yeah, I heard brain flu at first, which made no sense. Strange Loop. Yeah, I definitely felt welcomed at Strange Loop. Canada, yes. I don't remember when I first came to Canada, but I'm sure I felt welcome. Any other places? College. That can be true for some people and not true for others. That's great, yeah. Any others? Where was that? Niagara Falls. Oh, it's beautiful. The Canada side? Just checking. Cool. So now for all those places, what made it welcoming? So Strange Loop, back there. What made Strange Loop welcoming for you? The people. Were they, like, the people were welcoming? They just said hi to you in the hallways and stuff?
Yeah, everybody kind of wants to find out who you are, what you're doing, and it's a great day at work and knowing that encourages people to get involved.
Yeah, that's great. In case you didn't hear that, yeah, everyone wants to find out who you are and what you're doing, and they encourage you to keep doing that. For me, actually, since I was on that diversity scholarship, they had a special dinner for, I think it was actually for like Lambda ladies, but they invited all the scholarship people there. And that was great. It was like a smaller place for me to get welcome, and it was people who were similar to me, which was nice. What else made Strange Loop welcoming for the rest of you? Anything else? Just the people. Donuts. Yeah, they keep us well fed. They tend to our other needs, like when we're hungry. We have places to sit.
The Slack. We can talk to each other.
Yes. Yeah, the Slack. So that's another way for you to communicate and get involved and to know what's going on. Yeah, those are all great ways. What were the other ones? Canada. What made Canada welcoming?
Politeness.
Politeness. They keep you fed. Yes, all the maple syrup you want. It's not true. It's quite pricey. Oh, poutine. Poutine's pretty great, too. You should all have poutine. I didn't mean for this talk to be so Canadian. I'm really sorry. I also saying sorry. Okay. Very Canadian. What were some of the other ones? I can't remember them anymore. Oh, college. What made college welcoming for you?
The people and the organization, onboarding. It's not called onboarding, or orientation.
Yeah.
Was designed to make people meet each other and be welcome.
Yeah, orientation. They usually have like a whole week for that, and it's all about meeting people and you have fun things going on. Yeah, college is really great at that. So some things that were welcoming was like being welcomed by people, having good onboarding so you know what to do, how you're supposed to act, being polite, tending to your needs, so feeding you. Yeah. I'm trying to apply that, but it doesn't make sense. Anyways, what does this look like in software? So how can we be welcoming and polite and tend to their needs in software?
Answering people's questions without being a jerk.
Yes, not being a jerk is the key point there. But yeah, answering people's questions without being a jerk. It's very Canadian of you. I'm sorry. Anything else?
Showing people where to get started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, showing people where to get started.
Yeah, along with that, not assuming that everybody's been doing this for 10 years.
Yes.
But like making your documentation and contributing guidelines beginner friendly.
Yeah, so making everything beginner friendly, not assuming people have been doing this all for 10 years. Having contributor guidelines. I think that's also great.
Spending some time explaining to newcomers how to actually do stuff.
Yeah, spending time with newcomers. I think that's really great. Where would you do that?
When?
Yeah.
I guess I would like do chat like on Git or on Slack.
Yeah.
Or even like in some cases I even had a chat with the founders on Skype.
Oh,
That
yeah.
really helped.
That's really nice, yeah. Yeah, so chatting them with them on Git or Slack, even Skype. I think even before people reach out, having something like in your README so people can passively see where to go. It's good. So at the Science Lab, we thought about this. We did the same exercise, maybe a little bit longer. But we came up with this checklist of things for open source. And we wrote little exercises for each one. So those are all links. So we have public repository. We didn't really talk about that. But like being somewhere where people can find you. If this is all on your computer and no one can come and contribute, we were covering all our bases. Having an open license so you actually meet the open source definition would be good. having a README where you're welcoming people. A roadmap, something we didn't really talk about, but having your issues broken down, or just have so that people can know where they can come into your project and what they can work on. Having code of conduct, we didn't mention actually, but especially here at Strange Loop, like we have a code of conduct, which I think is great, and there's ways to level up your concerns. So I think having them on an open source project, I know it's not super common yet, but I think it should be. Contributing guidelines we talked about, so people know how they can contribute. And then this last one is kind of vague. I just say mentorship, but this one's more about the attitude, that you need to be welcoming people into your project and then helping them learn as they go through bugs and helping them learn to, yeah, even be a better coder. So fueling the movement, those were the resources we put together. So now part 2 is finding leaders. So we ran this workshop, the Working Open workshop, in Berlin back in February, where we picked a bunch of people from our community who are running really cool open source projects. Some of them were on that collaborate list I showed you earlier. They're already running open source projects. They know that this is what they want to do. And maybe just a little bit of strategy would help activate them. So we brought them all to Berlin. And part of helping activate them was working with them after the workshop. Yeah, so here's OK, we're going to start at this giant diagram. Up at the top, that's Abby and Aurelia. I'm Abby. Aurelia is the community lead with the Mozilla Science Lab. She's also, yeah, a great open source developer and like a map geek. So she's a lot of fun. So those are the 2 of us. And then we had all these people at the Working Open workshop that showed up. There's 22 of them. And all but 2 of them wanted to be part of our open leadership cohort. We named a bunch of things. I'm sorry if it gets confusing. But these are people who agreed to meet with us for the next 3 months for one-on-one mentorship to apply the lessons they had learned at the Working Open workshop to their projects. And at the end of that, we were going to have the global sprint, which is like a 2-day hackathon. So they're just getting their projects ready for a giant hackathon, basically. So we met with them for 30 minutes every 2 weeks. And mostly, we just worked with them to set goals. It's like, oh, what do you want your project to look like in 3 months for the hackathon? And they'll say things like, oh, like, be ready for contributors, so that we can actually get good contributions happening at the hackathon. And we'd hold them accountable by checking in with them every couple weeks. So soon after that, we actually added quite a few people to our open leadership cohort because they had co-leads on their projects. So we also met with them. And then at the global sprint, these are the people that made significant contributions to their projects. So they wanted to shout them out and give them a little thanks. So this is a little screenshot of what happened at the global sprint. So it's 40 sites around the world, a 2-day hackathon. And basically, it starts in New Zealand, and then it like goes around the world to Australia, Asia, Europe, and then just sort of goes around the world twice. Everyone's working 9 to 5 in their time zone. And it's really fun, and it's just 2 days of working on science things. So it was a good goal to work towards as people have these projects that they're trying to make open source. Yeah, I explained that. So the global sprint, we had all these new people. Yay. So now for that third part of fueling the movement, mentorship. So we had them sort of mentoring those people that came and got involved at the global sprint, but we wanted them to start practicing to mentor new people. And we wanted to sort of branch out of just open science to other parts of Mozilla. So we selected mentors for round 2. These are people that we thought would be good mentors. And then we gave them mentees. It's part of our mentorship program. And they started mentoring these people. So these bottom dots, sorry, this isn't the best diagram. I made it pretty quickly. But they're all nominated from different parts of Mozilla. So some of these are Internet of Things hackers. Some of them are part of the Women in Web Literacy group. Some of them are from our open advocacy stuff for the, well, open web advocates. Yeah, that's what they're called. So now I'm going to tell you some stories and lessons from going through this whole program and what happened. Oh, and also, I forgot to mention, at the Global Sprint this year, because we had done this mentorship, the amount of contributorship just like skyrocketed because we had measured the GitHub activity the previous 2 years at our Global Sprint. And then this year, I probably should have made a graph, but you can imagine it with my arms. It goes like this. Yeah. Very scientific, I know. But there was so much more interaction, I think especially because we focused on using GitHub for collaboration. So there's a lot of like issues and discussions, which scientists were much more likely to get involved in because they like mailing lists. So open source checklist. So we're going to go through this whole checklist. And I'll tell you a little story about one of the people in our program and also tell you a bit about what we taught them in each of our pieces. So our first person is Achintya. So this is Achintya. This is his GitHub profile picture. Oh, for all of these people, I didn't tell them I was talking about them, so I hope they don't mind. Hello, recording. Okay. Achintya is a science communicator at CERN, and he's a PhD student in science communication at UWE Bristol. So his project was Open Cosmics. Yeah, it does feel. Cosmic ray physics for everyone. So for a little physics primer, cosmic rays are high energy particles that bombard the Earth's atmosphere, and then they produce these shower of particles that we can measure here on Earth. So there's actually Crayfish. You can install it on your phone. It's an app that will measure cosmic ray particles, which is kind of cool. And you can also build your own cosmic ray measuring things out of plastic bottles. I'm not sure how it works, but it's also cool. But the problem was there's all these different ways to measure cosmic rays, from the real detectors to your own homemade bottle, but the data was very varied and there was no standards. So Achintya was like, hey, I'm going to bring all these people together, and we're going to make a standard. That way people can share this data across with each other. Yeah. So he's a little special because if you see those 3 green dots that he brought on, those are all these people that were running these projects, from the one on your phone to the other homemade one. And there's also Cosmic Pi, which from what I understand is Raspberry Pi for cosmic ray physics, which is kind of cool. And he needed to get people to collaborate around something and discuss with each other. So by giving him a GitHub repository, it gave him a place to collaborate and just sort of coordinate with these people. And afterwards, he said the biggest thing he learned from going through this whole system was how to project manage on GitHub, which isn't really what we were trying to teach him. But it's cool that by putting something online, you're more organized. So make sure your code is available. All those are acceptable. And then we have this curriculum called GitHub for Collaboration, which really walks you through how you make a pull request and how you collaborate with each other and discuss things and issues, which a lot of scientists are very new to. So that helped Achintya quite a lot. The next thing was having an open license. And we're going to talk about Rob. This is Rob. Oh, I have another picture of Rob. He's the fuzzy one over there. Yeah. So this is at our Working Open workshop. We're doing the open web stretch. We're leaning left to avoid the NSA. But he's working on a project. I think it might be cut off. No, it's OK. It's called PMC-Ref. So PubMed Central is this repository for life science and biomedical research articles. So what he wanted to do was you give it an article, and then he will give back all the articles that you can read for free on PubMed Central. So it's a little simple thing, but very useful for someone in the biological sciences. I'm highlighting him under license because I noticed he made a license 4 days after our workshop. So I think everyone else ignored me for a while or already had licenses. So that's why Rob gets a shout out here. Thanks, Rob. MIT license, very permissive, way to go. So if we remember, Rob's that one there, little red dot. And he was this is his first open source project that he was running. And he was actually able to get someone to contribute quite a lot, the yellow dot attached to his red dot at the sprint. And that was actually her first open source contribution. So yay, it was made possible, and it was legal because he had an open license. And now he's mentoring someone in our next round, this guy named Min. He's going to be at the Mozilla Festival, which is what this round ends at, where it's this art display with facial recognition. So when you walk by, it will recognize your face if you walked by before and tell things about you. So it's supposed to highlight security and privacy on the web. Anyways, it should be cool, also a little creepy. But those are the cool projects that are in this network. So yes, open license. The Science Lab recommends MIT or BSD. Also, we just point people to chooselicense.com, which is an excellent resource if you're looking for an open license. Next on the checklist is Kirsty on README. So here's Kirsty. She's actually one of our 2016 Mozilla Fellows for Science. So we also have a fellowship program where early career researchers will basically do open science for a year while we pay them to stay in their universities and just bring open science there. So Kirsty is one of them. She did a great job, and she was part of our community all last year. So she is a postdoc researcher at the Brain Mapping Unit and at the University of Cambridge. But the project she worked on when she was part of this mentorship was STEM role models, where she wanted to inspire future generations by providing the most exciting and diverse speakers for your conference. So she actually really took to heart this, you need to be welcoming in your project, and she made all her documentation was super welcoming. She's like, welcome, first and foremost, welcome, emoji, welcome in, another emoji, bienvenue, emoji, emoji, emoji. It was very exciting. So here she is, and yeah, she was able to get a couple people to help her because her tech skills aren't as strong. So then she got some people to help build this database of role models, which is really cool. And now she's mentoring a few other people, including 2 people from the Detroit Community Tech Project. And they're making this cool music box thing, which is addressing gentrification in Detroit and like using open source technology to help storytelling in that area, which is really cool. So another project, yeah, they're the red ones. But for project communication, so we have a handout called Open Project Communication here. And one of my favorite things in this is actually the open canvas that we made. Have any of you heard of Lean Canvas? Yeah, someone. So it's really popular in like the business startup world. An entrepreneur will like fill out the Lean Canvas. That's like a one-page business plan. So it goes through like problem, solution, like what you're trying to do. So we remixed it, and we took out the parts that were very like business specific and added things for open source like contributors and user profiles. And I think this is really important because it makes you think about what you're building, the product, but then also the community you're trying to build with it. Yep, so you have users and contributors. And I like this green square for project execution because I find a lot of people don't think about the kind of contributors they need in relation to what they're trying to build. So if you know what your MVP is, your minimum viable product, and what you need for that, if you need designers and a developer, you make sure you put that in your contributors, that you need designers and developers, and then think about how you will onboard designers if you don't know any. So that's really useful, I found. And it helps you write a better README if you actually know like your problem and solution. So that was, I can go back, I'm sorry. Cool, so next one's a roadmap with Bastian. There's Bastian. He's off on the side. So I was really excited when I paired Bastian with his mentee for this round, because his mentee emailed me back and was like, I can't believe my mentor is the Mark Zuckerberg of open source genetics. And he linked me to this article. And it's like, I had no idea. But Bastian's pretty cool. He runs opensnp.org. SNP is for single nucleotide polymorphism, which is the kind of mutation you get in your genome. But basically, it's if you've ever done 23andMe or any of those things that genotypes you, you can upload the results to opensnp.org. And it's public, and people can use it for research. And you can also match it to phenotypes, so you can see what the phenotypes would look like in use. Like, it will predict, oh, you're Eastern European, or something like that. So, fun story. When Bastian uploaded his genotype before OpenSNP, he made OpenSNP, he put it on GitHub. And some random researcher came along and like analyzed his genome and then emailed him and was like, hey, you have like a higher likelihood for prostate cancer. And Bastian was like, oh dear. But he was pretty young, but he told his dad, and his dad went and got checked, and they caught the cancer early enough that he was, he's alive and well now. So it's cool. You should share your genome. Okay. But we helped them through road mapping. Oh, that's what it was, road mapping. Even just helping them sort through what features they wanted over the next few months and break that down helps them actually get things done over the next few months, yeah. Otherwise, they hadn't been doing a lot for the year before that. So road mapping can help sort of get your community a kickstart and help new people come in so they know what you're working on next and where they can help. So we have a little like introduction to road mapping, so it helps you break down milestones and break things down into issues. Yeah. And next on the open source checklist is a code of conduct, where we have Richard. This is Richard. He has a moss beard. Here's another picture of him with no beard. So Richard, yeah, he's on the left there. This is at MozFest. You should all come to MozFest. But basically, oh, I didn't make another slide for him. Yeah, he worked on a lot of projects this year because he was actually fellow this past year. So one of the projects he worked on was SlideWinder, where he wanted to make presentations better so that you can like remix your HTML presentations easier like you can with Keynote and stuff. Anyways, it's cool. It's called SlideWinder. He wrote a cool code of conduct for that. He was also working on Science Fair, which was for like sharing papers and reading papers, which is more useful for scientists. But he always has a code of conduct, and he's always very aware that it is difficult for people to come into these projects. So I like to point out his code of conduct. Oh yeah, SlideWinder code of conduct. And here are a couple of resources on how to write a code of conduct and links to some good stuff. Oh, and the Mozilla Science Lab has a code of conduct, which is CC0, so you can just take it for yourself if you like. You don't even have to credit us. Next is contributing.md, contributor guidelines, and Tim. So there's Tim. So he worked on everywhere. I don't know why their slogan's sharing is caring. I guess, yeah, sharing your research is good. But he cares a lot about reproducible research. And this basically, yeah, it lets you run other people's GitHub code in a, on IPython notebook in GitHub. It'll launch it in a Docker instance so you can see it, and then you can edit it. Anyways, it's cool. I first met Tim at a hackathon at CERN, and he got into an argument with one of the judges about whether or not science was reproducible at CERN. He was saying we can be more reproducible, which is why we need this. And she was like, we're already reproducible. Anyways, reproducible science is very important. But he wrote a great contributing guidelines and was able to bring in quite a few people onto his project. So all the yellow parts, they came on before the global sprint. And now he's mentoring, some other people doing reproducible science work. Cool. So for those of you, a little intro on contributing guidelines. They're in your root directory. We use Atom here as an example. They did a pretty good job. And it's good to have some cheer, welcome people, have a nice introduction, give instructions on like how to contribute or how to run your things. And then, style guidelines is down there. But what's cool about contributing guidelines is that GitHub has made them pretty popular because it's pretty integrated with GitHub now. So if you open a new issue, like here, it actually has this little message at the top saying, like, please review our contributing guidelines. So it helps if you have them so people can read them before they make issues on your projects. Okay, so the last one here is mentorship, our big broad one. And I put Madeline there. She's pretty cool. This is Madeline. She's a PhD student at the University of Toronto. Here's another picture of her. She's here on the left. She actually spoke at our Working Open workshop because she actually runs a weekly meeting at U of T on like open science and doing open science. So she helped talk about that. But she has a pretty cool project called Phage Parser, which is around the CRISPR system. So CRISPR is like really cool nowadays and quite a buzzword because of all the genome editing stuff it can do. So it stands for clustered regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. That's a lot. But it's basically all of the black squares. Oh yeah, I can walk. I forgot my mic's like not, okay. So all these are repeats. So these are all the same part of the gene. And then these extra parts over here, they're from viruses that have attacked the CRISPR system. So it can actually remember what the virus is like. It keeps a hold of this. And then what it does is it can identify the virus later and then like cut it, which is why it's so great at genome editing, because it helps us like cut genomes exactly where we want them to be. But what Madeline noticed, and her PhD advisor noticed, is that a lot of people were publishing bacterial and archaeal genomes that have CRISPR systems. And we could analyze all that and find out about all this virus DNA in between. Like, what can we learn about CRISPRs? Because there's a little bit of unknowns in there. So that's a cool project. And she was able to engage like a lot of people on there. So like all those four, this is a long stage. Yeah, like all those 4 people were like new contributors at the global sprint. Also, I think it helps that she runs the open science meetup, so she can just like get people from both. And she's mentoring people now, including Faye, who runs the Mozilla community in the Philippines. And she's like making curriculum on how to, I think it's like how to run campus campaigns in the Philippines. I don't remember exactly. I should have written notes. Anyways. So curriculum stuff that we have under mentorship. The idea is good first bugs is labeling some of your issues as good first bugs is a good entry point for people who come into your project. And then we also have a personas and pathways exercise, which is used a lot in the design world, but I think we can use it for open source too. Since we're trying to figure out pathways for our open source contributors, it's good if you think of a persona, have a made up contributor, and make a pathway for them to walk through. So that's a resource you can use to make up some personas. So to summarize, this is our open source checklist. Many things. And, oh yes, and we fueled the movement by making these resources, mobilizing leaders, and then having them mentor others. So we'll see how well that works, having scientists mentor people from all other places. But I think it'll be great. So you can come to MozFest, which is October 28th to 30th in Ravensbourne, London. And, oh yeah, the tagline is the world's leading event for and by the open internet movement. Join us to build, debate, and explore the future of our lives online. It's cut off a bit. But I really like MozFest because we have an open science space every year, but there's also a whole floor for open use and a whole floor for advocacy. And it's really cool just to see all these places interact. So MozFest is designed to be like the web, a place where you can make things that matter. So these are all the people that helped, or they're in the mentorship program, or they're mentors. You guys have been awesome. Any questions? Yep.
It seems to me you talked a lot about issues related to the friction of people becoming involved, but my experience in science and engineering is that there's a motivational component to this as well. It's not clear. I mean, a lot of the issues that I see deal with people's fear or paranoia about being more open. So it's not really, to me, it's not the intimidation of getting involved and finding out that it's an uphill thing. There's a learning curve. It's more that they're just not motivated to do it.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of good resources like whyopenresearch.com that addresses a lot of those fears. Yeah, I didn't have too much in this presentation about that. But I think that's a really good point. I would take them to whyopenresearch.com. There's probably other places. But yeah, happy to chat more. Anything else? Cool. Well, enjoy your last keynote. Thanks, all. Oh. And the slides are there if you want to click on all my links. Thanks.